Okay, for our demonstration we're going to be using oil sticks to create this picture. Okay, so as you could see, a lot of these colors are in the picture. That's our whole thing. I'm not going to cover how I do that. I just wanted to give you information about how I put the paint down versus all the prep work and all the post work. So oil sticks are a stick. They're not oil pastels. Oil pastel and oil sticks have different kind of oils in there. So an oil pastel is one that the oil doesn't cure the same way as an oil paint, and so if you want to save that picture that you're painting, you would have to put it under glass. These are oil sticks, meaning they're actually very much like what's in, a tubed paint, and that kind of oil that's in those tube paints, that cures, meaning that it gets a hard crust on it and eventually it sort of dries out. It doesn't dry like water, but it dries like an oil. The difference between the tube and the oil stick is the oil stick has a little more wax in it. And what I like about it is I've been a pastel artist, and so I'm used to applying the colors with my hand. This allows me to do that. Okay, so the solvent I have is the same solvents that you would use with any other oil paint. And right now the one that I'm using is, like a lot of artists, Gamsol. So let's see how this will go. Okay, so this is the painting yet again. It's going to be a 16 by 20. It's cotton canvas. It has a tone on there that is acrylic paint, and this particular one I used an airbrush. I have a drawing already drawn on to the piece just to save us a little time. The first thing that I need to do is kind of figure out which color to start with, and I'm going to use a color that it's called Special K, and it's actually a color of the Primaries all mixed together. And I'm just going to put in sort of the dark first. I have mountains where I live, and just trying to get a blocking in. This is a very common thing that the artists do, and try to get a color set, get something set in here so that I can build from there. And I'm just, okay, this is a really nice thing about an oil stick is that you can put it on its side. I just cut it off a little bit, sort of like what I used to do with pastel. And then I can just go lightly over, or I can press really hard too, to get a line. So it's in some ways it really helped me to bridge the gap when I went from pastel to oil. Something about the tube paints where you have to apply the paint with a brush kind of confounded me for some reason. So this has really helped me. And let's see, my drawing didn't have everything in there that I can see myself, so I'll going to add a little bit in here. And this whole mountain is not going to have dark everywhere, so I want to really make sure I don't put too much in there. And what I'm doing with this oil, let me just give you the lowdown right off the top. Because, well, it's in order to make the painting work with a stick that you hold in your hand, I almost find it easier to mix my paints up onto the canvas itself. And so instead of mixing a particular color and then applying it with a brush, that's where I always run into trouble. So this is just my way of putting in some of these colors. They're going to mix right here on the canvas, so it'll be cool. Now I'm down here into the darks down in the bottom. This color is called Special K because it's CYMK. K is the key, and it's not a black, but it plays as a very, very dark color. And it's close to black. Now I do have a black also at my disposal, but this color really is sort of a mixes with everything color, because it is every color. Someday I'll have to explain that. But yeah, so it's kind of cool. I'm looking for all the dark spots that I can find. There's a little bit up here and a little here, and they look green, but this color is going to be fine for just about everything. It's very versatile. And there's a little bit going on down here. Now, one of the things that, to start out with too, one of my very fundamental thinking all the time when I'm painting is every color, everything has every color, and every color has its own composition. So we pick colors. People make paints. Sometimes we just buy them from companies, and you know, I don't make my own paint or anything like that. But other people do, so yay. But what we're doing here is we're looking at each of these colors and trying to say, okay, what's the composition in there of just that dark color? And then I'm going to put that down. Now, I can be wrong about some of it. That does happen a lot. So now up here in these clouds, I mean, this paint is very versatile, so you can make mistakes and fix it. So way up here, I have really dark clouds over here. I'm just going to go a tiniest little bit. I don't want to overpower it in any way. And I am using about, I think I counted 52 or 53 colors that I picked. So they're going to be a little bit of the dark is already in some of the other colors, so I don't want to get too crazy. When I think of the land, I think of darker and duller colors. When I think of the sky, I think most of the time it's going to be a brighter color. And so, I forgot to turn this on. Yeah. So I don't need to make a big deal of that. I can literally make one of these with just the basic primary colors. But it's a little more difficult, but I could show you that someday. So that is the beginning. Okay, so when I say everything has every color, I don't need to put that exact color every single place, because I have lighter versions and all the other. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick where to go next. I think what I want to do is, you know what, I might just start with kind of a white. Now what's cool about white, white is really pretty much a color that you don't see on very much of the painting, but it's in almost everything in the painting, because all the other brighter colors have some sort of a light to it. So for example, I happen to have colors that are close in terms of being light enough that are blue that I can add like a different stick. But generally speaking, I can just put in a little bit of white to kind of mark my spots and my clouds. Then when I add in my blues, I have a map. And what happens is this is kind of funny. You know, you put your drawing in, and before you know it, you've touched something, and then something else has gotten touched yet again, and pretty soon you don't have a drawing anymore. So this is sort of saving the spot, if you will. And so one of the biggest design features in this piece is the clouds, and then also the kind of ground that kind of reflects back. So I'm really want to get my designs fairly close. Now I'm put it to the side, and I just get a little bit on there. Now if I want to, I can just make a really light put this in really light down here, for example. And then any other color I put on top of it is going to be affected by this white. So that's neat. And the other thing about that is that you, whenever you have colors that mix together, you get a little continuity. And we're all in favor of a little bit of continuity. So now I just keep working my way around this little section here. Let's see. One of the things that I like to do is, let's talk a little bit in terms of composition. I have tried to find I've done a lot of my learning through the internet even. And, I also have a degree in art, but from a really long time ago. Things have changed. There's so much information out there on the internet. Some of it is helpful and some of it is not. And, people have a lot of opinions. I find that the artists have a lot of opinions, especially about, whether their style and their work and how they're putting it together, even their colors are the best. It's like, oh, man. But let's just, stay on the topic anyway. So they may not do things the way I do things, which is why, as an artist, the brilliance of this day and age is that you can find so many different ways. So if you're having trouble or if you're bored with what you've learned so far or whatever, we all are out here right now, especially right now during this time in history. We have the coronavirus shutting everybody down. So all of the artists went and put videos out online. So if you can't find an artist video of somebody who's doing stuff the way you would like to learn it, then you need to look a little harder because they're just like everywhere. But I feel like I'm putting my stuff out here too as sort of an offering of what I do. It isn't the same as a lot of other people. But, even if you pick up one or two ideas, then it works really great, right? Over time you end up with a lot of really great ideas. So take advantage while you can, because, there's some really big name artists out there right now that are all going online, partly because some of them had live workshops that had to get canceled. So suddenly it's going to blow up like you can't believe. And it's such an interesting and fun thing to do, to go online and research what other people are doing. And then just go back to your drawing board and practice it and see if you could glean something that will help you, make your own personal statement in this world. We're artists because we have something to say, and we say it in these paintings. So, and if you're just having fun, well, you couldn't have more information. Just have fun. Oh, it's quite a time, I say. All right. Now I'm going to stick some of this down in here. I want to make sure that I have that little hint of clouds that kind of go back. There's a little jazz going on down here. And then I go like this. Now watch, this is what's so cool about these. So this is your key, and this is your white. And I can go over top of this, and that's where it starts to blend into the canvas. Now this key is a little bit green, but that's okay. Let's just go ahead, and it's quite a little bit green. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to, it has a little tilt to it. So I'm going to be putting other colors over top of it. So doing this right now will make it all work together. You'll see it'll work, I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to take a little of that and keep going up a little bit. And then we're going to, okay, so here's what we've got. How to go. So I like to start somewhere here with these, where the sky and the mountains kind of meet. That's a really important transition. And I'm going to take, let's see here. I want this color. I'm very spoiled with lots of colors. Now this is what happens. So I prepared these the other day, but took me a day to get back to it. So it actually starts curing itself. It doesn't usually get hard all the way through, but it develops a skin. The skin won't let you use it very well, so I take that off there. And I'm going to go right in between here, right alongside of, see if this color will work, right alongside of where the mountains meet. And I'm actually the sky color, so I'm going on the sky side of the line, but right up to it. And what's good about them too is if they touch, I can reinforce my color by pushing it back over the top, whereas if I have like a brush, it might just blend it straight, and then so I have I have yet another mixed color to deal with. So this just lets me draw it on there, reinforce it. If I go back and forth, I get a really nice bright color. What I think about when I think about where the sky meets the, in this case, mountains, this thing is like basically has an aura around it. And one thing to keep in your mind is that the sky itself, from where you stand, is like many miles farther away than this mountain. Depending on how well, I have mountains here, so it cuts off some of my horizon on the sky, but it's like many, many miles, depending on how tall you are, what you're standing on, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, enough of that. So I'm coming in here. I just wanted to get that. Before I put this particular color down, I want to look for it other places. So everything has every color, and every color has its own composition. So I'm going to put this around here and kind of add this to these places. Now, I actually have some colors that would be maybe better for that. So, you know what? I'm just going to put some in just because, okay, I think of the compositions that I do with my skies as being sort of like, I missed one here, sort of like how they do figure skating. They have a border, and a panel, so that they don't go outside of the ice rink. But they use the whole rink. They use the whole rink. And a lot of my pieces are like figure 8 type, only it's elliptical. It sort of like comes towards you here and it comes towards you here. So it's almost like a double, because a sky painting, I think I have, been doing them with land for a long time. I think it gives them some grounding, but it's really different than a landscape. Get some of that green out of there. Because like if you do a landscape, you have land to here and you have a little bit of sky. And then I made a bunch of them that had really small land and a lot of sky, because they're really, the subject is the sky. But then I thought, well, it does look to me a little bit friendlier if it's, got some grounding. But that's, so I usually do a vignette here and a vignette here and a vignette here and a vignette here. And it has to have a crossover point, and maybe it has more than one. So when I did my research on what are the best compositions, I found, the basic ones, the thirds, the rule of thirds. I don't know if they call that the golden rule. So if you do a third and a third and a third and a third, those spots where they intersect are where you would put your subjects. If you, say, had some figurative piece, or if you had something interesting, you could put it here or put it here. They had the S curve, they had the L, the S, or from a river, and a few other ones. But you know what? At some point I just thought, I think I'll just do what makes sense for me to do. What am I trying to say here? And what I'm trying to say is that the skies where I live are vast. I live in Montana, big sky country. So that's why I kind of got to this point as far as compositions. And, again, there can be a lot of controversy around whether you're doing it right, which I think is very interesting considering we're supposed to be artists, right? So I'm going to go ahead and stick some of this blue down here anyway, because I have a bad memory to begin with, and I'll forget that I put it in there. But I want to have some kind of continuity with it. And this key color that turns green, that's not too bad in the land. Okay. And I could put a little bit up in these mountains for now. Now, mountains tend to be farther away when you see them in a group like this. So, they'll have a kind of bluish haze to them. Okay, now we're gonna, let's try some of these other sky colors. And this one is a phthalo, a light phthalo. And so that's really neat. And if the colors aren't quite right when you get to that point, you've got to be very patient when you do this process, because you're putting in one color at a time on the canvas. And so the matching comes after the colors go on. So you make educated guesses and hope that you're pretty close. That's my feeling anyway. Okay. And this kind of goes through all of these. There's a bunch of little blues cutting through all of these darker clouds. So I'm going to try to get it close, as close as I can. Now, by the time I get done anyway, it doesn't exactly match the photograph necessarily. But, you know, I really like the photograph. I like the composition. I like the way it feels. I like that these clouds seem to be coming towards you. So I'm going to try to be true to that. Now I have a darker version of this phthalo. In fact, I have two darker versions. And so as I go up, I'm just going to put a little bit at the tops of these clouds. Okay. You say, what are you doing? I'm putting this at the tops of these clouds because if I take a color that goes up and I put them a little bit at the top here, then I take the ones that come from the top down and I put the little under the bottom, then it actually lets that sky look like it has all sorts of continuity. And I'll use that word all the time because I think that's great. You don't want it to look like it's not from the same day, because definitely it was from the same day. So I'm going to put a little bit on the tops, you know, and I might put in a couple extra colors, so I'm not going to go all the way up, just part of the way up. And put a little of you in here. Now these colors, most of these colors, not every single one in this, I have a huge set of these colors because I've been doing this for a few years and I keep indulging in them. They're really great. So, yeah. I forgot, kind of lost my train of thought. So, yeah, you just have to kind of anticipate that you're going to be putting in these other colors. So, like I say, every color has its own composition. Not every stick, every color. So this has got brother and sister colors. So we'll just stick this down here because the greens come this way, and I'm just reinforcing that down here. Okay. Now I'll take the similar colors. Now, interestingly, this particular phthalo colors that I'm picking here are colors that we're using as primary colors to be. Now, like I say, this is not a traditional, you know, CYMK. These are the colors that you use in your printer. Okay. And everybody knows that you can get just about any kind of photograph off of that. But they're not traditional painting colors. I mean, the people who've been, you know, the painting colors and pigments that people have used through hundreds of years of time have gotten, you know, made their way to where we are here in today's day. So there are people who've learned those colors and they are very resistant to, they think there's this huge difference in, you know, what you use in your printer and what you use here. And it can get kind of dicey. So I'm not saying that, you know, there's any reason why you can't do it. But in reality, a lot of people use phthalo. They just don't call it cyan. So, Oh, people funny. Okay, so here's that part where I'm saying I'm going underneath the clouds with the darker. Underneath the clouds with the darker. And over the clouds with the lighter. And I come to the lighter on top of it. See? So I'm preparing these clouds. And what it does is if you look out your window, or you're sitting there in real life, and you see a bunch of clouds in the day, and you see white, you know, a lot of clouds, and then every once in a while there's a little spill of blue. It'll go from like green to turquoise to this, and way up here where I live it's real dry, so you see almost just a dark, probably ultramarine blue. If there isn't any chemtrails and there isn't any junk in the air, it is like, well, I'm not sure I'd say black blue, but it's really dark blue. So I'm going to come up with this guy, and I'm going to hit this with a darker, but I want to influence this a little bit up here. Now up here, this color is the bottom, because it's going to be the lighter. So I'm going to put that on the bottom up here. But, okay, so when I'm saying that is you're looking through your clouds, and you can see this if you look for it, where it's the top color, you can see just a hint of it under the other color, under the other cloud. And the opposite, okay, so I'm doing this backwards. So this should go on the top. I'm doing it all backwards. Okay, this goes on the top, top. There's a little skin off that. You don't need that on there because that just looks funny. Alright, go to the top. That's what happens when you talk and you try to chew gum at the same time. Okay, so there's that. Okay, I'm going to put this in here. Like I said, I want to influence this. Now, if I was mixing paint with a brush, I would probably be showing you my palette right now. But this is already mixed paint. So it's too boring to put that in there. What I'm doing, though, I can tell you what I'm doing is when I get done with the color, I put it on a cleaner palette next to the other one. And I kind of put them in order of how I used them. And part of that's just me. But that way, if I have to go back, because when I'm mixing these all on this canvas, what if there's a big boo-boo? Then I have to come back in and figure out what did I use and what order did I use it, because it will matter which order you use it. Now I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to bring this down in here, and kind of hit this, so I'm going to hit these guys. And if I get all out of control with what I'm doing here with these colors, then I can come back in and fix them. Because that's just how it goes. But this process is really one that I kind of came to when I was doing the pastels. How do you get it so that it looks like you don't have two separate paintings? Like if you don't have these colors down here and these colors sort of up here, even if they're a lighter version or something, how do you keep that from looking, like it's all a disparate picture? And that's where, if you were to take your photograph in Photoshop and go to CYMK, and then there's a setting I'd have to look that up, but it lets you see what the saturation of each of those four colors is. And you'd be shocked. Because there's, like, everywhere you look, there's a little bit of yellow. Everywhere you look, there's a little cyan, magenta, and the key, the black, or the dark color. It's crazy. Okay, so, now let's see. I'm going to go on the wild side a little bit here. Because why not? Now, to me, a sky has got a lot of, it goes from a green to a purple. And so now I'm coming in here with the color that's got a little more of a purplish to it. I think it's a offshoot of ultramarine, and I'm working my way up. I'm mixing it with this green. So what I don't need to do is cover the entire bit of color. In fact, if I start doing that, I'll start going like this underneath these, just to get a good start. And because this is going to be my darker at this level. If I mix them all the same, then it gets like a flat spot. In our eyeballs, you know, are very active, and we're scanning and stopping and looking at things like cats with laser beams, and so if you cover it all up with a flat spot, the eye will just skim right over it, and you don't want it to stop necessarily. But you know, the eye is looking for a little texture and a little bit of variation in color. So I'm putting quite a bit on here, but I don't need to cover every spot. This is an awfully nice color. So it kind of lets the purple and the greenish color, the teal color, play with each other, so to speak. So I need to put a little more up in here. And by having a toned canvas, I can see a lot easier where I've got paint coverage. So some of these spots don't have some of these spots show that pink pretty easily, and so see, I lost my white there. I'm gonna come back in and tap it. I just don't want to lose my design altogether. And this is what happens with my processes, is that, you know, these are relatively thick, and so they butt up to whatever else is on there. And so you have to, you know, expect to come back and fix it. I need to clean this off a little bit. Okay, better. Let's see. So I've got the dark colors got to go under the lights just a little bit. And it doesn't have to go all the way back down, because I only have to go the middle tone down. But, okay, so I'm going the under. Yeah, the under. Try to remember what I'm doing. And brings all these clouds out. And if I miss a spot, it'll be noticeable. But I can come back in and fix it too. So this is actually a really nice color, because it's not so garish. You know, it's a mixed color. The next thing is to remember what? To remember to go back down into the ground parts. So I want to make sure I get enough blue in here so I don't have to come back in too much later because I forgot something. So I'm hitting a little under here. There's going to be some gray in these clouds, and I might just put a little bit down in here anyway. So you know, it isn't these colors work together in real life. You know, we see a spectrum, but it's, you know, a lot of the same color does hit everywhere. Okay, now I'm going to come back to this guy, and I'm going to say, okay, I can take this blue down here even, and it'll go from here to here. So I'm sticking it in there. This is going to be green anyway. Just spots here and there. Hit it so it has continuity. I can go over this mountain a little bit, blue it up a little bit from this green. I probably could have gone with a Payne's gray too in the mountains if you had something dark, just a dark color. Okay. Now, then, let me go a little bit wild. This is well, it's a cobalt blue actually. The cobalt somewhere, I think, between a phthalo and ultramarine, and I'm going to go real light because it's real dark. Oh no. So I have a good base of these other colors, and this thing is not quite cleaned off. There we go. Now let's see if we can get it. Okay. I'm going to try a different part of the stick. I'll just pull a lot of that off. Okay, good. Alright. So it should go on pretty easy, and I'm going really light over it. So I'm making it real dark up here. And that will make it look like it's coming towards you. So what you would see if you looked straight up, that's what you're looking for. You know, a lot of people don't live where there's a lot of sky showing. They have buildings that they may work or live in, or they have a lot of trees or something. And so, you know, studying the sky here where there's no trees and it's just wide open, you know, it's given me an opportunity to do that kind of studying. Even if I'm sitting there in the chair, I just look outside and go, oh, look at that. So I guess the whole point of saying that is that, you know, whatever subject you pick to work with, you know, if you have something that you just really love and it's in your line of sight a lot and you invest your time in working with it, let's say you're like flowers or, you know, pets or whatever that might be, you know, studying in real life what's happening is the best. And even if you're not standing outside, you don't even, like, I can sit there and I can look at it, and I don't even know how many years I spent wondering what color is that, you know, which is kind of a not necessarily a very good question, because everything is every color. So it turned out it wasn't the best of questions, but you know, that one object can look like any color in the world depending on the time of day, and whether the sun is hitting it just right, whether it's getting dark, whether it's getting light, whether it's the middle of the day. I mean, everything has every color, and it changes all the time. So, but I had a chance to learn that by looking at sky. Okay, so now I'm going to come down here with this, and I'm going to lay this dark blue in. Just lay it in. These are clouds now. Instead of doing sky, I'm just bringing it down into these darker clouds so that I can just keep the continuity going. I don't know if you could say that enough to yourself. Just keep the continuity going. Make that run on that skating. You know, it has to go everywhere. You make more points by going out and to the edges and keeping, you know, doing something spectacular. What you don't want to do is you don't want to make it so that everything goes out of the painting. Because what happens, especially, let's just pretend for fun of it that you want to go and do a big show. Well, you don't want people to view your painting and you have a thing that makes it go right into the next person's painting. You know, you want to steal the thunder. That's how it goes. And if, you know, frames will help a lot with that, but also your design can help a lot with that. So anything you can do. Let's see. I'm going to go underneath all of this, where this green is. I'm just hitting the underside of that so that it gets, like, there is sort of a blue that comes along. Shadows are not one color. Shadows are like tons of colors. If you ever want to see what colors a shadow is, just for a minute, if you have a ceiling that has, I don't know, a light bulb and maybe an outdoor window, and the ceiling is painted white, observe that, because you'd be shocked at how many colors show up in that shadow. So, you know, the tops underneath the foliage I see a little blue in there. I don't need to put colors in there that don't that I don't think are in there, because that would just take a lot of fixing and cleaning up. Okay, so that didn't go too bad. Now let's let's see, I have a, let's see, I have purples and I have kind of, well, it's called storm cloud actually. And see what happens here. Okay, that's too light. Let's go with a kind of a dull purple. Yeah, maybe you're a dull purple. Okay. I'm going to get these clouds down here. And I want to leave my aura just a little bit. And then come in. Yeah, because I'm going to tap this stuff in. Okay, so when we get all our colors on here, the first thing you want to do with this, as far as my process goes, is you want to make it so that all the colors are on here before you start doing anything. And the reason for that is that you're already doing a lot of blending and mixing on the canvas. So if you interrupt that process and you think, oh, I'm just going to blend it now, and you get impatient, I'll just wait and put that last color on, what will happen is you'll mix it and you'll have a color, and then you put the new color on, and now you'll have two colors instead of like 4 colors. And if you're patient and you get as many as you can, and you can't see any other spots where it could go, you know, where that color could go, then you tap it with your finger, and then you come back in with a brush if you need it. I find that the brushes it might just be me. It's probably me, because so many people can figure it out. I'm still working on the brush strokes in like tube paint, so I'm working on it. I can get there. It's not like I can't get there, but to apply the paint, it can get well, as they say, muddy real fast. Okay, so I'm going to use, I have actually maybe I'll just stick with this guy. Okay, I'm going to just do a light touch on this now. Because, okay, so I know, I see a purple comes up here, and see a purple comes up here. So look for purple, and yeah, and remembering that some of these whites are already gone. I'm thinking of the color, I'm thinking of the design, and that's how I'm figuring this out. So I'm seeing it's a darker. Now, when I'm putting this together, I don't have to stay, people will go, oh, well, there's a gray there. Well, gray is every color anyway. So if you improvise a little bit, that's why we have artistic licenses, because we can do that. We're like empowered. So I'm going to stick this up here. I want to keep track of this. Now, this is cool about clouds, right? Clouds, just like the aura around here, clouds have spots where they're a little darker, a little lighter, a little darker, a little lighter. By putting that in there, even though you say, well, that's down here, well, it's really, every color's everywhere, right? So it's what are you accentuating right now? And if you follow these clouds, and I can see it in there. This also happens with in between, like leaves on a tree, where you think that the sky should be the same color as where the tree isn't, but it isn't true. It's like in between the leaves, you got a bright spot or a dark spot, and if you put those in properly, it looks like totally real. So I'm making I'm adding a little bit of contrast to it just by doing this, and I don't have to get crazy. But if you put it in, then it's like, oh yeah, okay, now I see it. I don't know. And you can see this on the picture to some degree. So that's what you're looking for. Okay, now I just keep it going. Don't get bored. Keep it going until you get this color done. And put a little in here. Okay, skies, all they are is vapor. Okay, some people think there's junk in there, but let's just say it's vapor, right? And if you hear that talking, that's my husband talking to my dog. Okay, so this was a fun color. So I can put some of these, I don't know if you see it, but it's almost got a little bit of like color rays that come up. It's not so obvious that you fall on your head or anything, but it's just got a little bit of color rays going up. Now remember, I'm vignetting these corners just so that it's darker. Okay, well, let's just do this guy, and now I'm going to come in with this guy. Why do I want to do that? Because I want to keep you in the painting, and if I am successful with the rest of the composition, then I'm happy as a clam. But sometimes, you know, like these whites have to catch each other to go back down, and if you vignette it, it's just like it's like a no-brainer. You're making it so people can, so the skaters can turn. And I do it in the bottom too, all four sides, just to reinforce the desire to keep people from leaving the painting. And okay, that really is neat. This purple is kind of neat because it kind of gives enough contrast to sort of give it a forward look. Okay, so I've got this going here and this here. Let's get enough paint on there. So I'm going and adding a little bit here and there, and my goal is to fill in all the spots, right? So let's see, I have I think I have a dark purple. I'm going to go there with this when I get to this mountain, just to make sure I get the darker about in the land there. So I'm going to reinforce this. There we go. There we go. Better. Now this is like hazy on the picture. Hazy down here, right in here. But I need to have some of this definition up here and back. This mountain's farther back than this mountain, so it's going to be even hazier yet, but that's a really good purple. And I have always got a set of trees at underneath the mountains, and if you know why, you could tell me, but I'm going to just tell you. So it's because there's a creek there, so that then the trees grow there. The rest of where I live is kind of high plains desert, and so for the most part on where I actually live, it's like got prickly pear cactus, and it's very dry. Which, by the way, I come from Minnesota where it's like fairly humid, and I was shocked to find out that the actual colors and intensity of the shadows were significantly different where it's dry than where it's wet. Where it's wet, it has a tendency of being the shadow isn't quite as dark. So when I came here, and then of course they say, well, you got rattlesnakes and stuff here, and I'm like, what? And they go, yeah. And then I couldn't see underneath the brush, and I still can't. So I don't spend a lot of time. I'm not a plein air painter at all, and I'm a little bit chicken to do it. So. I had a job working in a corporation, and so I didn't have to worry about all that wildlife. It's a different kind of wildlife. Okay, so let's bring this purple down into these shadows, shall we? It's a dark color, so it'll be at the bottom. And again, you don't have to cover everything with it. The purpose isn't to have just one color. The purpose is to make it look realistic. Is it's got many, many colors. So you hit and miss it, hit and miss it. You're trying to get enough so that it's got a good, the amount of it is proper. So, you know, there's a little bit up here. There's more down in here. And the other thing I do is I make kind of an allowance for a frame. So I actually make the composition in the same ratio with that allowance. So the composition is inside the allowance, not all the way to the edge. But I need to keep that in mind to some degree when I get to edges, because I'm going to be compensating in case they put a frame over it. And a lot of times I use floater frames, which actually it doesn't cover any of it, but you know, most of the traditional frames cover it at least 1/4 of an inch. Don't forget too, these frames can put shadows onto the edges. So if you do that, you know what happens? Then it's even more than 1/4 of an inch. So don't put your best stuff. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit in here, just a tiny bit, just to darken this. You don't want to put your best stuff where it's going to get covered, you know. It sounds obvious. I laugh because it sounds obvious to me, but it wasn't obvious when I started, that's for sure. And one day, this whole thing where I add that extra allowance onto my reference pictures, I was at the frame shop, and I came around the corner and I saw my friend putting a floater frame, which doesn't cover it. And you know, she put the floater frame, and I thought it was an odd choice. And so once I saw her put a different frame over the top, it completely, I had such a small amount of grass, it covered all of foreground and half my signature. And I'm like, this is not cool. And so I went back to devise a way to keep that from happening anymore. Heck no. And so it was simple. It was a simple fix. And I do it every single time where I make sure I have an allowance for that, because that's like a mistake that is completely fixable with your process. So, okay. Yeah, why not? Just a little. This is, you know, and you say, why are you putting it everywhere? Well, because this pigment is going to be not represented if I don't, right? And I don't want it to be a half and halfer. So I can even, if I've really felt it, I can even go like this a little bit. And this is getting kind of slimy. Usually I only take off a portion of the skin because then I can hold it in my hand better. But it's not a science. It's not a science. Just, okay. Now, where am I missing? So sometimes when I'm just standing here, I have to move just a little bit to see where, like in between your eyeballs, you think you're doing something and there's nothing going on. Because, you know, oh, that's a whole other discussion. So you have dominant eye, you have a non-dominant eye. Non-dominant eye fills stuff in. I'm a righty, a right-eyed person, and so if I have something very important, I need to get it right. I center myself right over my right eye, and I try to make it right in the middle. I'm not trying to paint down here, and I'm not painting over here or over here. And I did a little experiment one time by just the project I had helped me do that, and it was like, you are just putting in a lot of distortion if you don't move your dominant eye. So it's just food for thought. Okay, so I'm going to start with a darker reddish purple. I think that's what I've got here. No. I'm not going to say that this doesn't get a little messy, but it isn't too bad. Some people actually use gloves when they're handling these, but I don't know. I don't happen to do that, but I wouldn't say that it wouldn't be a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to hit these clouds again. Now, as you can see, I hope you can see this. I gotta turn this light off. Might make it like, I didn't see I had a shadow there. Okay, so this is actually dulling down this other dark purple I had. So it's great. That's really great. And by the way, anything that I can mix without right on the canvas is good, not bad. Okay. So we have these kind of dullish clouds. And again, I want to be a little bit careful because I have a couple other lighter colors that I can put on there too. So I don't have to go all the way up because they get lighter as they go up. So I'm going to just hit these bottoms. And let's see here. Oh, I got this guy up here and this guy here. Okay. By mixing these together, that saves me time at the end. It's a natural way of making these colors kind of sing with each other. You're not just covering everything, right? We talked about that. We're just influencing. Okay. A little bit up in here. Now, by the time you get all of these colors on here, you're going to have all the main colors. You're going to have all of the primaries on here. Now, I talk primaries a lot because I kind of studied up just a little bit on it. I'm not like professional. I'm not a professional speaker on that or anything, but I kind of studied up on what are the color models. And the color models that they came up with hundreds and hundreds of years ago, all the way to what happened when people wanted to print color, which is like, well, I kind of think it was like a little over 100 years ago. I could be wrong about that, but okay, here we go down in here to kind of mellow out my little mountains. And it's fascinating to me how for so many years, especially as a pastel person, I didn't really understand the power of the primaries. Everything else comes off the primaries in a theoretical sense. Now, when you're painting, that hits real life. You're using, they use pigments, right? And these pigments, I'm going to put this in here. The pigments can be, okay, let's say the 4-color press came along, right? 4-color press comes along, and somewhere along the line, it was developed because people wanted to print with color. And which colors? If you're sitting there and you're the guy who has to run all this stuff through a press, before we had all of our computers and such, you don't want to have you don't want to have like 10 plates with 10 different colors. You want to have as few colors as you can to make as many colors as you can. So that's the problem they're trying to solve, right? Okay, so then we come along and they come up with the red, yellow, blue in those families, which is the ones that are going to be the best. Cyan, magenta, and yellow. And it all follows the models I believe it was Isaac Newton came up with these. Maybe they're more. I shouldn't probably say. I'll go check that out somewhere. But if I do a color class, I'll make sure it's correct. But you know, a long, long time ago, some of these models came out. So they used the models probably. I wasn't there. But, okay. Now we're going to take a medium color purple. Same kind of purple. He just has a little, oh, look at that. It makes it gray. I like gray. Okay, so anyway, they come up with those three colors and put in a black. And voila, they have brilliant colors that can be made with those kind of presses. Somewhere along the line, we come up with a bunch of computers many, many, many years later, and we want to be able to print off the computer. So we use the same exact colors that the printers use. But in the meantime, you know, paints have been made for many, many more years than that. And so if you're a paint maker, gosh, I don't know, you know, now you're just talking about just a very limited palette of those three colors. And, you know, they're trying to sell paints. And anyway, I never learned how to mix and match using the primaries. And when I say primaries, I'm CYMK. I'm in that camp. A lot of people not in that camp. I don't think it makes that much difference, really. I mean, the CYMK, it came, you know, they picked them because they have the most vibrancy when they're coming together. They're the boldest, brightest, highest, I don't know if you call that the highest chroma, but it's just, someday I'm gonna show you that, but if you're interested. Anyway, so if you start breaking down, let me see if I can make sense of what I'm saying. If you start breaking down these primary colors in your painting and say, you know, sometimes you look at a painting and go, what is missing? And you say, well, you think of the three colors, blue, yellow, red. Which ones are I missing? And you know, it doesn't matter if it's a specific blue, yellow, red. It just has to be in there. If it isn't in there, it doesn't look real, because in reality, especially outside, outdoor light, you know, has a lot of color in it. And if you put on you know, the sunshine and the sunsets and everything, put on a big old show that even without it, oh, here, look at that. This is the baby one. No, this is the one that's the lightest. And that's going to give me my clouds. Okay. So if you think, oh, well, it doesn't look right, something looks a little flat, you might be missing a color or part of the color family. Okay. Now I'm really liking this light one because it's giving me a chance to get these dark grayers. They're dark grayers up in here. I can even wipe the edge of that off. Get a little too much of a darker color on there, and then I don't get my look. So see, I'm filling in all this pink now, and it's giving me that gray cloud with all of the vibrancy that's been built into it. If you go crazy, you will lose everything, so don't go crazy. By the way, I say these things to myself all the time. Okay. That's coming along pretty good. So I can also add in a little extra shape in here. I'm setting myself up to get some edges at the end of this layer. Probably will be a multi-session layer. This is the biggest and most important of the sessions, probably. You know, they're all important, but this one's really important because it sets everything else up. And the details are icing on the cake. You still have to have a good cake. Trying to keep to some level with this design. It gets complicated in here, so I get lost occasionally. Maybe every painting I ever painted get a little lost. Let's see here. Well, this is kind of a big deal right up here. I don't want to lose all my blue in the middle, because that'll spark up, and I can always come back in and add to it if I kind of make a mistake. That is just the give and take of painting, especially like you've got these paints and they're kind of thick, and so you know the gist of this is really what you're aiming at. You know, I want people to feel like it's a really wild and, you know, fun sky, and has a lot of vibrancy to it, has a lot of movement. You know, for something that doesn't have any movement, it has a lot of movement to it. Some of the things people say. So I'm going to put this up in here, and you'll notice I'm covering up a lot of my pretty blue a little bit, but I can bring that back in. And what's good about it, doing it this way, for me, is that when I do bring it in, it'll pop. It'll be like, okay, how do people look at things? And people have a couple of globes for eyes, right? And they're not all, both in the same spot. So you got one sees this and one sees this, and we have a tendency of being, you know, when we look around us, we scan until we see something that's bright or light or somehow draws our attention. Then we stop, and then we look at it, and then we scan. And so, like, a lot of times, skies in particular, especially for people like me who like to watch where they're walking, all you see is like peripheral of sky, and it kind of blends everything together. So if it's a blue day, it just looks like a blue sky. But when you're looking at it, it's all sparkly. But every once in a while, you got to put in a pop. That way people will, when they're scanning your painting, and that's what you want them to be comfortably scanning the painting, they'll hit a pop, then they'll hit a pop, then they'll hit a pop. And that's what leads them through the painting. So you're setting yourself up really well for making a pop. Okay, so it doesn't, you know, I've lost a little bit of stuff in here. And I can do one of two things. I can come back in with my white, but I'm not doing that yet. I want to get all the rest of these in here instead. Okay, so let me finish this out here. There's a little bit of light here. It gets really light up here. Always, you know, right below the tree line, which this very dark spot is the tree line, there almost always is a lighter color back that far. And it's not a bright, like a bright yellow or anything. A lot of times you'll see a yellow. Maybe it's the time of day I take the picture, but it isn't bright. It's more of a dull color, and the brightness comes towards you, you know, as it comes through the grasses towards you to the foreground. So here's an interesting little fact, fun fact, is that because of the way we see, the light rays are longer if they're blue, then come red, and the shorter ones are yellow. So when we paint something, all the colors show up in the foreground. As they go back into the distance, the yellow dissipates first, and then the red, then the blue. So if you've got a bright yellow and it's a bright yellow field, as you go back, it kind of goes a little bit duller and redder. And then it goes finally into purple and blue. And if you follow that, you'd be surprised at how believable the depth is. If you don't, then it looks flat. And flat's the killer. Yeah. So, like, if I know that there's a bunch of junipers up in these mountains, and I have one right in the foreground, it's going to be a color here, but back there it's going to have a lot of blue, and you won't see any detail. It's just a forest of junipers. So, yeah, interesting fun facts. Okay. Now then, I am going to go a little bit on the crazy, and I'm going to pick a light green. Now, you know, I didn't for a long time realize how there's always a little bit of green up in those clouds or in the horizon. Depends on what you can see. In this case, I'm going with some of these clouds up in here, if I can see where they're at. It doesn't look really green. Okay, so now I'm trying to figure out if I can get my design back in here. That's a good one to do. Now, I'm not going to put this all the way up in the horizon or up in the sky, because some of that sky is supposed to be coming towards us. So, but the farther away, I think it plays. Okay, so I'm way over here. I'm going to just put lightly in some of this greenish color. I don't put in a lot of white at the end. You know, to me, white is just a very... Okay, let's see, I did that out of there. White is too... a lot of times it looks kind of blue. It doesn't match anything. It doesn't have, you know, the sky colors, the cloud colors, all of this haze. It'll pick up the earth too, right? So you want to make sure that you're capturing some of that. White is just sort of a dull color. And if you have any big spots of white, oh boy, it is just a flat color, and no different in that sense than black. Black by itself is really just a flat color. So they're weird colors, right there. There's a stick for them, but yeah. The idea of the colors. Okay, I'm going to stick a little bit here. Just because I've lost my value a little bit. I hear my dog outside the door. Yeah, and so, okay. I'm going to try to, one of the things is this is 1/4 the size of this. It's 8 by 10. So when I'm painting this, I have to enlarge it by 2. So you're translating it. If you did an 8 by 10, my suggestion would be make your reference picture an 8 by 10 if you can, because it's a lot less translation. And yeah, so I'm gonna, let's see here. Okay, so all right, I'm coming here. Now, I have had people say, well, it's a sky, it doesn't have to be identical. No, actually nothing is. Nothing that you paint is probably going to be identical. But it should have some essence of what it looked like, because that's why you picked it. And it does have a composition. So this little skin is not working. Okay. And I get a glob. Okay. Alright. Now I'm just making spots there. Here is Bugaboo. coming across here. And this is the one. See, now I can just pull some of that right off, and I have so many colors underneath it, it covers for me. Okay, now I'm going to hit this guy over here. I'm losing my stick. It's all getting hard to manage it a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to hit this a little bit. See, it happens, it just smushed it all the way. Okay. I'll just get a little more. And then down in here. I'm going kind of an older stick, so it's across here. Done a couple of these. Now I'm going to just do a little bit up in here because it got very dark, and this will be a good color for lightening that up a little bit. And down in here, down on this little horizon. One of the things that, if you really study sky a little bit, is that down on the horizon is a lot of times it starts as a green, a light green, of course, and it too can have a lot of the colors in it. Like you'll see a dusty red, pink like color if you know, in the evening or whatever. So really look when you're looking at the horizons. Okay, I got a little glare up here, so I might be missing some. Alright, now then, I'm going to go down in here, hit some of the lights off the mountains. That's going to have a little bit of yellows and oranges in it, but I just want to, you know, have the continuity. So this is kind of in the middle. Let's just put it in and put it in and put it in. Okay, so that one kind of, yeah, I have a sister brother color to that, I guess, if I need it. Okay, so while we're at that, let us try. Okay, this is kind of fancy footwork here, but there's almost always has a little bit of a pink in the clouds, even though you don't see it. In this case, I'm using one that's kind of a peachy color. You don't always, detect it unless you're looking for it. But it has a tendency, if you do this, this acts as a red, and so having a red in there is really important. here and hit this green. I'm trying to look for it in the spots where it would be. You know, I'm really just trying to look for that. And some of that comes from underneath. So, you know, there's a little bit of it up in here. Now this is what's so cool about like a peachy color like this, is if it's in the right light, you know, your painting, it ends up in a house with the right light. That color in particular will glow up when the color shifts at night in real life. It'll pick that color up and glow it out. Now if you've got a cloudy day, it will dull that color down. It's a very vulnerable color. It's a very adjustable color. I always think it's kind of a magical color, and so if you put that in, you'll be surprised when the light shifts in the evening. I think you'd be really surprised at how it picks that up. Now, a lot of people would have to spend a little time looking for these colors, and some people will get it right away. You know, it took me a long time to see them, and then when I understood how things worked a little better, I could look for those colors. You know, we as people are taught from a very early age that everything has a color. There's no such thing as that. Everything has a color, but everything has all the colors. So depending on what kind of light it is and how it's, you know, shining on it, what time of day, and what's the angle as the earth goes into the sun and away from the sun, those are very key things to, you know, to what colors you're going to see. You know, if you follow along with the photograph, you're going to be okay. You can see it right up in there. It also kind of has like a yellowish look to it, but this I don't know, I just love these peachy colors. They're kind of my thing, right? Because they do have such a variability as far as it goes. They do have a very, you know, they can make this painting come alive. It's almost miraculous that, you know, it's just miraculous that it happens, and that it happens, you know, very mathematically. When it's this way, then this, if then. But if you pick it up and you put it on there, you're going to have a glow fest sometime. Maybe you'll lose a little other times. Okay, so I have, I'm going to put this color to the side for a minute because it's kind of a top color for the rest of this. Okay, I want to just see if I've got enough of it over here. I don't want to miss a spot. And the cool thing, like I said before about these sticks, is if you push hard, then that color will go right in there. Okay, I don't want to leave 2 spots. It needs to have at least 3. Okay, I'm putting that to the side now because I really want to start. I want to maybe go to. Let me take this color. That's a little bright. Okay. I'm just going to take this little burnt sienna color and I'm going to put it back into these mountains a little bit too. Because as long as I'm adding in this reddish color, I can add in a little. And some of this foreground has, in the front mountains have a little bit of orange and yellows in it. Peaches in it too, thank you very much. And so that's how I'm going to build that in from here. It isn't all the way up the mountain. It's, you know, it has little spots where the light's hitting it. Now that I've got that in my hand, I can come down in here and start hitting the oranges that come across these, the plains, if you will. Just the tiniest bit of it. And what that'll do is that'll make it look like, it's going to go back a little. And I'm just kind of blend that in a little. Okay, now I have some down in here and some in here, and I'm like kind of looking at these here. It's just the dark part. You know, you're gonna have fill in with all sorts of other colors. It comes up, comes up, comes up. So the darkest is the shadow. Then I hit it with this, and as it's moving up the stalk, a little over here. I'm just going to put a little over here so it doesn't seem like a weird design. And up in here, up in here. Okay, that gives it a little bit of believable depth. You know, one time I was trying to figure out what is wrong with the one picture I was working on, and I couldn't figure it out. And finally, it occurred to me when I turned the piece upside down, like they do sometimes for drawing, I turned it upside down. I was completely missing the color red. You know, there's no red in it. Not an orange, nothing that resembled a red. So that was a mistake on my part, and then I could fix it. That really helped me though. Turn it upside down. Okay, so I'm going to hit this just a little bit. This kind of a bright orange. And I see a little bit of it over here though, down towards the foreground. And if I push hard, I get that color will come through. See, it wants to turn a little green in a way. So I just push a little harder. Now if I was doing this with a brush, I'd probably just have a big old green mess. So, I mean, it's something to consider if you wanted to learn this. Now, at the same time, you may get some value out of the process for the, okay, let me think here. Okay, so I got to go above the dark a little bit. Doesn't need to go everywhere, just here and there. But if I use the brush, I'll go back to that comment. If I go to the brush and kind of follow the same suit and not fill everything in, I can get away with it to some degree. But a lot of it is if I get it too too saturated with paint, then I have to come back in with like a knife. It's what I like, a painting knife, not a kitchen knife, a painting knife, and come in and get some of that design back. The less of it you have to do, the better. Okay, so now I'm going to hit some of these oranges in here, and this is a very bright color, so it's going to be foreground color mostly. Every now and then you might hit like up here, you hit this guy just to make sure you got the right colors, and you're going to lighten that up over time, so with other colors. So I'm going to stick this in here, 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 here. Okay, now I'm coming back to, and this goes up to the top of the foliage, and there's a little bit in here and a little bit there. So, you know, a lot of people like to step back and take a look at what it is, because you're working in details and then you have to step back to see, to scan it and look at it and go, is there any big problems with my design that I'm looking at or whatever. Yeah. So what's funny about this orange is when it hits this blue, it makes it green, and there's green in there, so it's not going to be a problem if you use it that way. Now it's brighter above these. Now I'm remembering that I need to go into the corners to some degree, but I don't want to get too crazy. I want to keep my design outside of those edges a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to, oh gosh, this is, yeah, this is going to be neat. Okay, so we talk about red taking over from a, like the yellows dissipate first. So duller goes farther in the distance of the yellows. And part of what makes that work, okay, I'm going to show you 3 colors here. So I have a bright color, a medium color, and a dull color. It's not as dark as this color, but it's a dull color. Well, you start that dull color back in the back. And my line of sight here is really far, so it sort of comes out as a it just sort of looks like a line back there. So I'm getting this line and wipe it off because there's already a lot of paint there, and a little bit less on the edge, and then come back and hit that line and push down so it really hits that line. Moves that blue out of the way. Okay. And now the question is, this is a very, very important line. And am I where I should be on all of the line? Even though we know that the dark part that's now gone is, we're going to bring it back, is a tree line. And so a tree line on a creek, it does go up and down. It still needs to have sort of a straight across feel somewhere, so that people don't feel like when they put that thing on the wall, like it's crooked. So I always try to get that. And you can, even if you've got little boo-boos or something, you can just hit it with a little bit of pressure here and there, and that will give you a break. Now, okay, we're going to take this darker, and I'm going to wipe that off a little, and I'm going to come back in down here, and I'm going to just go across this, just here and there. Got to find the right point here. Now, as you come forward, it kind of there's going to be some greens in there and all that. So I'm going to leave, make it be kind of lines, little lines across, just so it comes towards you. Maybe I just, at some point I can come into a up and down, and that has a lot to do with what I'm seeing. If I look out into the real world, it looks like flat, it just looks like a line. Pretty soon, eventually, it starts to look like foliage. So that's what I don't want to start that at the wrong spot, and I can just draw this in. This is kind of a nice medium color to start getting some of these. And even if I go over this orange a little bit, it makes it all come together, like it all blends in a little bit. So that's okay. We're looking for some recognizability of what you're, like, you don't have to come to my exact location to understand what you're looking at, because you've seen fields before. So you want it to be somewhat recognizable. Now, some people would, maybe put in other colors first, but you see, here's the brilliance of these little sticks, is that they will allow you to come back in and get that same original color. Okay. Because you can press hard. Whereas if you get, let's say you get let's say you come back in with a brush, depending on how well you're doing that, you might end up with I don't know, just a blended mess. Okay, so I'm going to come back in with this guy, and he's pretty good. Now, it's kind of yellowy. Okay, so, I'm going to try something different here now that I'm talking. All right, this color, this color is more of a peach. Now, why did I pick peach instead? Okay, because it's got it'll play pretty good with this, but in the distance, this lighter color would be have a little bit sense of red to it. So instead of going with the bright yellow right up here, I can make it look like a field that has the same field going. It's just that the farther you go, the little bit redder you go. So instead of going with the golden up here, I'm going to go with a little red. And guess what? This is where I can come in here and start making my light spots on my mountain. It's like putting a puzzle together. Come across here and then hit this guy and come up this mountain here a little bit, and this one comes and you can see the light on the mountain. See how cool that is? And coming up here and up here and a little bit here and a little bit there. Okay, so then I'm going to come across and hit some of these. Okay, and down here. Now I have an orange color that, if it works here, is a little bit, I don't know, darker. So I'm going to try to bring it forward that way. Now you don't hardly even notice that it's true, but it's very, very close. Now these are kind of towards the top of these grasses. And go like that. And I want to lose my visual line there. Come up here with it. Come here with it. Go across. Just push harder and it shows up. Pushes that blue aside. You know, keeps him from getting too green. Okay, this is all going to be a big old green thing. Up here comes some, and here comes some. Okay, now up here I have quite a little bit. I made that too small. It is something that happens, you know. I don't always, when I'm looking at it, I don't always translate it quite right, so I have to keep an eye on myself to make sure I'm doing that okay. And these get bigger and bigger as you get closer and closer to bottom. Now you'll see that I'm looking here for design of my strokes, so I have a little vignette still and a little here, but I don't want to lose, I don't want it to look all off balance, so I'll just keep an eye on that as I go. And then put this up. So, and now I can come back in with this yellow. And I'm not, you know, I haven't made all my edges yet, so pop it here and there. I use this in the foreground. I don't want to use this anywhere else because otherwise I look like I've lost all my depth. And we don't really need that kind of trouble, do we? So, and I'm sticking with this. Now I'm going to put this the side here. Okay. Let's see. I think the next set of colors we could use is probably green. Okay. We have some, green that's a little bit lighter and a little more. See how that works. Okay, so it's got a little blue in it and it's a little bit lighter, so go down in here a little bit. So it's kind of a green, shadowy green color, and we don't have to go all the way into the corner. A little bit in the corner. And so yellowish greens are those that are more in the sunlight, and you may or may not know that, probably do know that, but I'm rambling. So even these greens out here, let's see what that does. Okay, so I have that green, and it's not quite the right green, but it's I can put it a little bit over this, or kind of goldy color, peachy color, and it makes a nice green that's distant. So any kind of green that is in the distance would probably have some level of blue in it, or if it's in the shadows. See what I have here. This guy needs a little. And this is a much darker color. That is it still has that blue, but it's just a darker version of it. That works pretty. You know where that could go to is in these mountains a little bit, because it's a little too purpley. It doesn't need to be that purpley. It can have a little bit of a green to it, and that looks a little bit more natural. Now I remember my green is getting mixed in with the purple over there, but so if I am lucky and I get a few strokes that are right, like in here, I don't have to do so much with my edges, because it's creating edges as I go. So that's cool. Now in these mountains there are lots of trees, so it's blue, purple, but it's also got a hint of green to it. And we're gonna just pop that. Pop that. Pop, pop, pop. Just tap it. Alright, and then we're going to kind of come up in here, try to get our line back here. Pop this guy. Alright, it's a really good color. So this one here, I'm going to just hit it with this here and there in this. So the light ones, the light color will still come through a little bit. And we're going to go down in here. And don't forget up here. Now if you press too hard and it doesn't leave the paint, which happens sometimes if the crust on there is the skin on there is a little tough, it will let that pink show back through, which we don't really want that. Once this is cured, that first layer, that won't happen anymore. if you come back on a second layer and you push really hard and it isn't, and the skin isn't gotten a chance to get kind of real dry, you can pull that skin right off, and that is not what you want to do, because you end up with it's almost a scar, I would say. Okay, I'm going to take a real wild color down here, and I'm going to take this brown. Okay, now I'm sticking the brown in where it's real dark. Now people might say it's going, you know, not in the same order that other people would use. If you get to know me, you'll realize that you kind of have to go by your own instincts, and I'd say, you know, whatever works is really what I would suggest. I'm kind of go by my own instincts, and that's how I end up making this. So I'm going to try to get this dark color in here to kind of replicate in here. And then I'm going to come down and try to really darken these colors up. And it's a really nice brown color. And something about the brown, you know, brown is made up of orange and blue. And so in reality, it has a red in it. Because orange has a red in it. So therefore it has a red in it. And that kind of rounds these shadows out a lot. Sometimes the shadows in this part of the country, did I mention it? They're like really dark, right? So I can use a combination of all the dark colors, from a brown to a maroon color, which I have, and a dark green, and even sometimes a black and dark purple. And those colors together make this super dark color. And so that's really, you know, if I'm in the evening picture with a bunch of trees in the distance, you know, I'll make them that combination of colors, and it really is nice and dark. Alright, so I've reinforced that. Now I'm going to come in you know what, I haven't used this Payne's Gray. Or what are you? Oh, that's not Payne's Gray. I'll use this Payne's Gray, because it is Payne's Gray. And that's the blue in here. Okay, so now I'm coming back with this blue, which makes more sense with the purpley blue colors up here. Just a little bit in there, you know, gives it all that character. And yeah. Okay. Okay. There's a little bit comes up here. Alright, now I'm going to come back in with the greens. I'm going to see if I can get my darker green, and now I'm going to top off some of this shadows in a more serious fashion. So I've built in my shadowy area, and now I'm just kind of coming in and going to put in the green so that it looks like green grass. Some of this green grass is not as, this is sort of a warmer green than some of the first greens I put in, and so those colors can stay in the shadow. This is going to bring me to the light, so I'm thinking of that a little bit. come on in here. And then this guy over here has got some of that green. Okay, now I'm going to go with, I think this one's a little bit, see if I clean that off. Making my way up. Now as I get this, I think this typically happens as you get to where the sun is hitting these greens, you don't have as much area to cover. It's kind of hitting it hit and miss because it's hitting it as the earth is moving away from the sun, and so it's just hitting the tops of everything. So it would be a little unusual if you had to fill in a whole lot. Now hit you. And some of these grasses are picking it up. Well, the grass around here it's a funny place because there's a lot of sparseness, because there's not a lot of water a lot of times. Albeit sometimes there is, like they'll have rainy years, and then they'll have like droughty years, and so, and what's neat about this place is because so many of the people that live here have been multi-generational, there's actually a very interesting phenomenon, I call it anyway, where it's sort of a generational memory of weather, instead of just one person's memory of weather. Like somebody's, they'll remember what their grandpa told them about weather. And so that's pretty cool. Let's see how this plays. Okay, so this adds a little bit of brighter green. Now this is going to be the tops again of some of these brighter colors up here. So it's not everywhere, but it has to be where it needs to be. And it's just building up these little bright spots, because there's going to be like yellows over the top or really bright green over the top. This is going to brighten up this field a little bit. And that's nice. Okay. So missing a color here. I'm going to try to add this one. Okay. Now when I take a color that I have to add that to my list. I keep a list of the colors that I use for each of these because, like I say, you know, if anything came back later and you had to make an adjustment, you know, there's so many colors that have to be mixed that if you don't kind of follow the similar pattern of how you did it, it wouldn't stand out like a sore thumb. So we don't like that idea. Now we're gonna, there we go. This one's sort of soft in its own way. Okay, we'll just all right. So now I want to, I can do, okay, I have something here that's called warm white, and it's, okay, let's talk warm white. Let me wipe my hands off a little bit while I talk to you. So warm white is a color that could make the sky come back together with the land. As you notice, I didn't use a lot of green. That was grass green up there. And I didn't use this dark brown or anything like that, mostly. Okay, I have to really, oh, this green got all over. So I'm using a little solvent on there. I want my hand to stay fairly clean because, you know, there's no reason to get all sorts of goob on everything. Sometimes you feel half blind. Okay, so I'm gonna pull a little of this back in here just to lighten it up. Now there's a little bit of yellow into this white. So I can though add in, okay, up here. Now I see how nice and yellow that gets. I don't want to take away all that green I put in there. I don't want to take away all the other colors I put in there. But I want to kind of put it in the right spot, whatever that means. And it looks like it's a little bit more on the underside of the cloud. So not every single one, because some of these come forward from the back of the cloud. So I'm just going to pay attention to each cloud separately because they all have, it's like three-dimensional. So where is the sun going to hit it? And what this is doing, I think, right now is it's reinforcing my design again, that the design where we first had it by using a light color with a little bit of the yellow in it. So we put down a green, we put down a peach. Now we're going to hit back with this kind of yellow and see where we go. Hit it down here. We just kind of skim across here a little bit. And that, you know, this yellow over this purplish color, looks purple to me anyway. It's sort of really nice because it'll dull down a purple. It won't distract from the purple. It won't try to compete with the purple. We're not looking for that. So you know. Okay. And up here. little bit of a happy note down here. And over here. Now, yeah. So I just keep going. Let me keep going. As these clouds go up, they're really coming towards us. So, I'll tell you the big secret is look at the color. You know, sometimes it's deceiving, and you don't have a really great formula to figure out which color should it be. But if it's, yeah, I just think it's. Eventually, we're going to top a few of these off, probably, I'm going to guess, with a real white right at the hot spots, right where it's the most exciting. So don't forget these guys. It gets hard because these are up and it kind of gets caught up in the light. So it gets to be shiny, and then I don't see that very well. So I have to kind of look around it. And you. And you, and you, and all right. Now let's take our little warm white here, which is getting hard to hold. I'll take the other section of that, and I'm going to use it again here. I shouldn't say again because I don't think we've used it down here, but I'm going to reinforce this using this color to reinforce some of this light, and especially as it is in the background, because some of this yellow and even the green is not as vibrant as in the background as the foreground. So this is a very nice color to kind of calm it down and lighten it up. Then it really looks like background. Now, there isn't just a whole lot that I see in the very foreground, but it still sets us up a little bit. Okay, I'll hit you guys again. Uh-oh, see what happens? You have to clean it off. Okay, so you just swipe it. Get rid of that pigment, come back with something clean, and then hit it. It's very easy. You don't have to, yeah, you just don't have to you don't have to, okay, so let's say that you kind of make a mess of things and you've got the paints that you use a brush to apply. Well, then you have to, you know, and a lot of times you might even have to wait until it cures out before you fix it. That isn't very cool. Okay, now I have this really interesting color. This is really more of a, I'll say it's more of a transparent type color. It looks very dark, goes on kind of greenish gold. Okay, let's just see what happens. Oh, that's kind of good. So you can come back later in the process with it. Too, if you want to glaze with it, you can easily do that. But it also works here, and it gives me a just kind of a golden brownish, greenish something or other color, and it sets me up here. You can see I use quite a few colors, so but it kind of even just darkens these parts under here, underneath where our yellow flowers are going to be. Gives it that variety. You can overwork these, but I just do what makes sense at the time. I don't really want to overthink that too hard at this point. If you make paintings and you take videos, that's really great. If you can even make them into like like time-lapsed, and then you watch them, and then you'll find out where you're doing double the work or you made a big mistake or something. You're going to see that right away. So it's a really good idea to keep, just to keep track. Okay. Now we're going to take, I have these, they're kind of pinkish colors that are kind of beigey pink. And I'm going to come back in and try to get these main sections. There's some up in here a little bit, so I can kind of use these to calm down my dark purples if I want to, which I do. Okay, I come back in here. I can pull off some of that paint if I go, if I just go back like this, I can pull off some of that green and get my stripe back in there. You want to watch what you're, like when you're doing these horizontal lines here, you want to kind of watch them. I mean, these are fields. They aren't, it isn't a perfect line usually. Okay, now I'm going to come into here, into my foreground a little bit, and build up some of the heads of these grasses if I can. Oh, see, I went right down to the pink. And you can get some little artistic strokes in here. Remember, the front is, the grasses are possibly longer, so you can get a little bit of that in there. I'm going to hit this, and a little bit down in here, just to define some of those I think they're weeds. They're not like flowers. They're weeds. Okay. That's good. Now, I'm going to use a couple ones that's a little darker than the other, but it's really, I guess a salmon kind of color is really good. See if I can keep building that pink in here. You see there's quite a bit of pink in there, so if I can build some of this pink in here, it'll be a little bit nicer. Oopsie daisy. All right. Now this pink is a darker color than the pinks we used in the sky, but they're friendly with each other. They get along very well. So that's another way to look at everything. Has every color and they all have their own composition. These are darker and duller, and so they work really good for the land part. Let's stick this in here. And the tops of these green guys in the front, they seem to want to have a little pink in there for some reason. So I'm going to try to cooperate I can. And just a little bit in here. Oh, there's a piece right in there and there. And I'm going to sort of hit this guy a little more. You really have to look for that red, I think. Okay, now this color is going to be a little bit lighter than that one, but right there in the same family. A little pinker than the other. But it kind of gives it some character. So let's say that you're going to use these more towards the front than back here, because it'll play. It looks like the same color, but it looks like it's a color that's in the foreground. And because it is like basically the same color, just one is just a tiniest bit different than the other, it really will play. So I don't need a lot of that in here, but it's got to be somewhere in here. And I go way out here, so let me go way out here. Even if it's not quite, you know, your photograph is never going to be completely lined up with what you're doing. So, you know, use some of that artistic license. Okay. Alright, this color now is going to blow you away. This is what we call Cad Maroon. Cad Maroon is it's almost a semi-transparent, but it really, if you go really light on here, it can be almost a purple, it can be a red, it can be, it's just a really dark reddish color. And I can take it and use it in a variety of ways up here. It's I don't know, sometimes when you're trying to get that dark color, the light color to stand out, you can just put one of these colors in. Now, even up here, a little bit, not harsh, a little bit, you can really, it's a magical color really in its own way. Definitely, well, it's not just a land color, by the way. If you have one of those really brilliant skies that, you know, sunsets that's really orangey, the dark clouds can be this color. It's very versatile. Okay. And I'm going to put a little in here. So what's this going to do is when you go next to a green, this is really going to make that stand out. You know, not on it so much, but next to it. So that's pretty cool. Now, I might have gone a little too red on that, but I can fix that pretty easy. So, in fact, I might just do that. Well, let's see. I'll go back to my darker green on there. Now, some people would say I made a mistake. Guess what? It's all prone to mistake. There's so much to it that, you know, it works the way it works. Okay, so now I'm going to come back, and I want to hit this with You know what? I think I gotta come back and hit this goldy color. And bring that back out. All right, now we're going to, I see some yellow in here and I want to see if I can get it. Now, some of this is in the details, so I'm going to come back in later and do the knife, but let's see if we can't get these top here a little bit on here, so just hit a few of the tops up here and bring that color down. Now way up in here I have a few that hit the tops of this other green here. Okay, now then, what are we going to do next here? I think what we need to do is highlight some of these blues back in, and then we're going to start tapping it in and getting our edges. So I want to get the blues. I see a lot of pink up in here, so I want to make sure I have blues to cover. I think I'll maybe take this guy. And I'm not trying to I'm just tapping in, especially where there's a little bit less of the color, maybe on the top. What I'm trying to do is I want to in order to get this to get all the edges in here, you have to have enough paint on there. And so my goal is going to be to get rid of all these pink dots in here. And I'm sure other people might, you might not even want to do that. But I do want to do that, so I'm in charge of me. So I'm going to try to hit as many as I can find. And there's quite a little bit of that up here. So maybe you've figured this out, but you put a lot of colors on, and then you're going to maybe come back. This is one we've used before, and kind of back and forth between these colors just a little bit. So because you're going to end up covering some. There's a little bit down here. Okay, so I want to stick up here because it's a little darker color, and I can do a lighter blue down in here. Now I'm going to take the one of these little turquoise ones that we had towards the beginning and hit down in here. Make sure that I haven't lost the best of my blues down in here. Like I say, this is really neat stuff because you can move, you can cut into the colors better than with coming back in with a brush and trying to brush in some new color. I haven't figured out how to do that. Maybe there's a way to do that, or maybe you just go in and cover over the top. I don't quite know, but I'd like to figure that out sometime. So, okay, I'm going right over my aura, and I'm going over these far away clouds. Why? Because they're going to be a little dark. They're going to be a little bit bluer. Okay, up in here. Okay, that's going pretty good. Now maybe I'll just take my lightest one and hit this. I want to make sure that I'm getting light enough down in here so I can hit the bottom of it. I always make a mistake. So the darker goes under the cloud, and then the lighter goes below that, and then pretty soon you've got an illusion of depth to some degree. So I'm gonna hit this guy, hit this guy, hit this guy, hit this guy, and pretty quick here now. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to tap everything in. What does that mean? Well, all of these things have like edges to them, and I'm just going to tap the edges, and then where it needs to, I'm going to use a brush very judiciously to, you know, calm down some of the edges. And what I'm trying to do here is, what I really want to do is make sure that I'm, before I walk away and let it cure out for a day or two, I want to make sure that I have all the edges. And now, if this was a smaller piece, I'd probably go in with a so I'd probably go in with a knife at the very end of that, because, you know, it will bring back all my details, especially in my foreground, not so much my sky. So I'm throwing in a little bit of the more ultramarine color just up here and there, so that my turquoise and my ultramarine can dance a little bit. So that's what this guy is. Alright, this may be the coolest part of all of it, these last few steps. And it should get a little bit closer to done than you might think, hopefully.